Welcome to the Invite Health podcast, where our degreed healthcare professionals are excited to offer you the most important health and wellness information you need to make informed choices about your health. You can learn more about the products discussed in each of these episodes and all that Invite Health has to offer at www.invitehealth.com/podcast. First-time customers can use promo code podcast at checkout for an additional 15% off your first purchase. Let's get started.
By now, you've probably heard that the gut microbiome is an integral part of our health. And we certainly know that the gut microbiome is composed of many different strains of bacteria. And what we also know is that if we have any unfriendly bacteria that starts to run amok within our intestines, then that can create havoc in our overall health. We know that the gut microbiome is clearly a driver for our immune system, and we know that 70% of our immune system is gut-based. So we think about intestinal health, we cannot overlook the role of those very important bacteria that we all carry around each and every single day. And there was a study that came out just this week where they were looking at the role of the gut microbiome in healthy aging. Well, that obviously makes sense, but sometimes scientists still need to go out and do these studies so that they can present this information to the public so people understand a little bit more about the role that these bacteria are playing. Now, when we think about probiotics, which is taking those good healthy bacteria and putting them back in, incorporating them back into the microbiome, this is where quality and purity and making sure you are using the right bacteria in your probiotic formulation really matters. So I'm going to talk about our probiotic HX today because this is a wonderful 5-strain blended bacterial formulation that does so much to enhance our microbial environment to really allow our immune system to thrive so we have proper inflammatory responses. I'm going to get into all of that today. I am Amanda Williams, MD, MPH, and let's get right to it. Let's talk about this new research that came out of the Institute for Systems Biology, talking about how researchers have identified distinct signatures within the gut microbiome that are associated with healthy versus unhealthy aging. And this is key because most people are trying to live healthy, long lives. And if the bacteria are playing a predominant role in kind of driving that or dictating that, then it would be quite wise that we understand a lot more about this. So this was just published in the Nature Metabolism journal. And the research team, what they did is they actually analyzed the gut microbiome, the phenotypic and the clinical data from over 9,000 people. Now, these were people between the ages of 18 and over 100 years old. And I think that kind of one of the driving points to take away from this clinical research was that the data showed that gut microbiomes became increasingly unique as individuals age. So the older people were getting, the more unique patterns the bacteria were actually showing. And I think that this is why we often in the natural health world encourage people to make sure that you are always incorporating bacteria into your supplementation routine. When we say bacteria, we're talking probiotics. So obviously there are certain foods that we know can be very beneficial, things like yogurt, kimchi, for example. We know that these fermented types of food help to stabilize and promote the proper growth or replication of those healthy bacteria. We always want to try to chase any of those bad bacteria out. And that's the problem with many people who follow a standard American diet, is that the system actually kind of becomes overrun with these unfriendly bacteria. And then this starts to impact the aging process and normal metabolic functions. And we start to see more and more pronounced inflammation occurring throughout the system. Now, in this particular study, they were looking at different markers in the blood and correlating that to these unique patterns of bacteria that they were detecting within the microbiome. And they found that this unique pattern appeared to start in middle ages. So when people were hitting 40, 50 years old, there was this association with a clear blood metabolic signature, which to the researchers suggested that these microbiome changes may not be simply just diagnostic of healthy aging, but they may also contribute directly to health as we age. For an example, the way that they describe this is indoles are known to reduce inflammation in the gut, and chronic inflammation is thought to be a major driver in age-related morbidities. So the more that they could see these different patterns within the gut microbiome, the more that they could, more fine tune and have a predictive value. And in science, that's basically what you're always doing. You were testing these different hypotheses and you were looking to see, is what I believe about X going to be true? And if not, then what is the explanation? And so this is really, really exciting work that they are doing. And I want to talk about the different bacteria that we use in our probiotic HX, because as I mentioned, this is 5 different strains. It also has a prebiotic in it too. Oftentimes people will ask, well, does that contain a prebiotic? Yes, it does. It has inulin in it. And what the prebiotic does is it kind of primes the intestines to prepare it for the introduction of these good, healthy bacteria. So in our probiotic HX, this contains Bacillus coagulans. It has Lactobacillus rhamnosus. It has Bifidobacterium brevi. It has Bifidobacterium animalis, subspecies Lactus. It has Lactobacillus plantarum. And you may think, how am I supposed to, memorize all of these different bacteria? You don't have to. All you need to know is probiotic HX. And this is a very powerful blended probiotic strain. So all 5 species are supplied in these colony-forming units, also known as CFUs, meaning that they survive and colonize in the intestines. Now, this is key because there's a lot of probiotics out there on the market that maybe you purchase it at your local drugstore and you take it and you think, oh, maybe this will be helpful because I'm having some GI issues. And the strength and the quality of those bacteria are probably not what you think that they are. And this is important, and we recognize that importance, and we follow the science at Invite Health. And so this particular product, what's really lovely about this is that it is shelf stable. It does not require any type of refrigeration. And that is very, very handy for those who maybe travel and maybe you're going to be exposed to different foods, different things that can kind of alter your microbiome or irritate your microbiome. So in the probiotic HX, we have all of these strains that are actually all registered trademark strains, which I think is what kind of sets it apart from other probiotics out there on the market, like our Bacillus coagulans, for example, that contains Lactospore. Now, Lactospore is the registered trademark clinical trial stable form of Bacillus coagulans. And this is a very well regarded strain of Bacillus coagulans. And the reason why I say well regarded, it has been studied in human clinical trials, and they see how it is impacting the human gut microbiome. Now, what makes Bacillus coagulans really quite unique is the fact that it can produce these spores during its life cycle. And this is a really nice way to promote this diversity within the gut microbiome. Now, you can see from other types of bacteria how they can bring about these benefits. But with Lactospore, this is what makes it so profoundly different, because it is the spore-forming bacteria and it allows for all of these multiple health benefits. So it's categorized as a functional food in a sense, because we understand more and more about the gut microbiome. So when you combine this spore-forming bacteria, this Lactospore, along with Bifidobacterium brevi and the Bifidobacterium animalis subspecies lactis, this allows the gut microbiome to just thrive. These bacteria have been studied. Let me just kind of break down a couple of them for you. The one particular study, this was published in the Journal of Clinical Gastroenterology, and they were talking about the use of probiotic in healthy volunteers with evacuation disorder and hard stools. So many people, it's either one or the other. Either they feel like they got really loose stool or they have constipation. So this was a double-blind, randomized, placebo-controlled trial. And they were looking at people who were basically chronically more to the constipated side. And we know that constipation can affect anywhere from 10 to 20% of adults at any given time throughout their life. And we're not talking about just an isolated incident. We're talking about people who are more chronically constipated on a regular basis. So in this, they took Lactobacillus plantarum. So remember what's in the probiotic HX. We have Lactobacillus plantarum. And this particular trial also looked at Bifidobacterium brevi, also in our probiotic HX, and Bifidobacterium animalis subspecies lactis. And they gave these folks this blended probiotic to see if they would have any type of an improvement in their chronic constipation. And they found that the subjects that were given this combination of Lactobacillus plantarum, the Bifidobacterium brevi, and the Bifidobacterium animalis subspecies lactis reported a significant improvement in the number of weekly bowel movements compared to the group that was given the placebo. Now, it wasn't just that they were having more regular bowel movements. They also reported that they had less abdominal bloating. They had less burning and pain. These are huge things just from putting 3 healthy bacteria into a daily routine. And this type of study can just drive home that point of how important our microbiome is. Now, there was another human clinical study that did this combination, once again, utilizing Lactobacillus plantarum, the Bifidobacterium brevi, and the main symptom that they were targeting this were things that were associated with irritable bowel syndrome. And so they were dealing with people who had bouts of chronic constipation, also chronic diarrhea. And in this, they once again found that these particular strains seem to not only help to regulate the normal bowel movements, but they also acted as a strong anti-inflammatory. So when we think about the role of bacteria and what specifically they're doing, and that's why they said in this most recent study, being able to use the microbiome as an overall predictor of the aging process, I think is something that we should not overlook. And seeing that probiotics have this really integral role in the regulation of the function of our gut barrier and looking at the mucosal lining within the intestines that we know 70% of our immune system is located there. And seeing study after study that shows that these strains of bacteria, such as Bifidobacterium brevi, could be very, very helpful in the treatment of things like irritable bowel syndrome and chronic gut dysbiosis. When we think about chronic gut dysbiosis, many people have heard of leaky gut syndrome. And you're probably not absorbing enough nutrients if you have leaky gut syndrome, or if you have Crohn's disease or ulcerative colitis or any type of irritable bowel disorder. So by just implementing a treatment plan that includes putting in good healthy bacteria, it seems kind of nonsensical. Like, well, that one should just be doing that, right? If we know that these bacteria are playing the predominant role of keeping us healthy, and it's that microbiome that is driving the way that the immune system responds in terms of inflammation, then why wouldn't we be turning towards things such as probiotic HX that has these clinical studied strains of bacteria that have been shown to be beneficial for people who deal with hard stools. That's beneficial for people who deal with loose stools, because what it comes down to, it's creating kind of symbiosis and creating an equilibrium once again within that intestinal lining. So having these 5 probiotic along with that prebiotic, having that inulin in there, really allows for us to recapture our overall health. And this is why I wanted to kind of point this out, because sometimes when you think about probiotic, oh yeah, there's probiotic from this place and probiotic from that place, but not understanding enough that specific strains of probiotic is what have been shown in clinical trials to actually be beneficial. So if you just go in and you just get any random strain that has not been tested in a human clinical trial, then you don't exactly know what the efficacy is going to be. How effective is this actually going to be for me? But when we're using something like probiotic that has those 5 strains that have been used in clinical trials, then you can rest assured that this is going to be very beneficial to help optimize not only your intestinal health, but your overall immune system and your way to kind of regulate, in a sense, inflammation in the body. And we know that chronic inflammation is the driving force for every single chronic disease out there. So I certainly encourage you to check out our probiotic HX. It really is such a wonderful formulation. Now, if you're curious as to how you should take this, you can certainly work with one of our nutritional experts, and they will be happy to give you guidance as to when you should take it, how you should take it, how many per day, depending upon what your health goals are or your health needs are. I generally myself would advise taking your probiotic in the evening. And the reason why, and I look at it in terms of that healthy aging process, is the intestines are usually more relaxed in the overnight period. And for that recolonization to occur, I find that there is oftentimes a greater affinity for that overnight. But there are different reasons as to why someone may take it in the morning versus at night. So definitely talk to one of our nutritional experts, and they will give you the best guidance they can to get you on your path to health. I want to thank you so much for tuning in to the Invite Health podcast. Remember, you can find all of our episodes for free wherever you listen to podcasts, or by visiting invitehealth.com/podcast. Do make sure that you subscribe and you leave us a review. You can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and we will see you next time for another episode of the Invite Health podcast.